Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Great to be here. Lovely to present. And today I'll be presenting on various different studies that Irena performs and the REMAP team performs, Renewable Energy Roadmap team, of which I'm a member, and the role of PLEXOS in those studies and how we use them to, how we use models and how we use data analysis to inform decision makers and around the world. So, first of all, who are Irena? Irena are an intergovernmental body established in 2011 and have 169 members and 15 states in accession. So the main goal of Irena is to essentially promote the adoption and sustainable use of all forms of renewable energy and all renewable energy sources in a sustainable manner. And this takes various different forms across the agency. We're headquartered in Abu Dhabi, where many of our divisions are, and we also have our Innovation and Technology Center in Bonn, Germany, which is where I'm based. But the agency itself serves as a center for excellence, knowledge and innovation, a global voice of renewables, advice and support, and as a network hub. And this has many different roles. And it's near universal membership among UN countries. So, and as I mentioned, I'm in the Renewable Energy Roadmap team, and we produce various different roadmaps at a global, regional, and country level, and we also produce some thematic studies. So our global reports look at the full energy system, power, gas, industry, buildings, and transport, and look at how we can get, what is a 1.5 degree scenario, what does a 1.5 degree scenario look like for the world? And also, how does that compare to current plans? And what are the gaps needed to enable this at a global level? So we've produced a whole range of global reports. And most recently, these have been cited in G7 targets, G20 targets, and in the tripling target of COP28. And these fit very nicely with our regional works. So most recently, we have produced a Southeast Asia roadmap. We are working on several others. And essentially, these assess the technology roadmaps technology pathways for these scenarios out to 2050. And also, we do various different scenario analysis, of which PLEXOS is a key part in this study. But essentially, it's to help us understand the key technologies and trends and cross-cutting opportunities, and then communicate these with key national stakeholders in various regions across the world. And at the moment, we are currently working on our updated version of our EU study directly with the European Commission. And we're also working with the European Commission on an Eastern Partnership study for Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Ukraine, and Moldova. So essentially, these are to inform high-level political decision-making, target setting, and essentially show what these pathways look like. What does a 1.5 degree world look like? It's hard to know. That's why we run models. That's why we're all here in different levels of that. You know. And essentially, it's to help inform decision making and policy targets going forward, and generate the discussion, the high-level discussion needed for renewable energy to advance and for climate compatibility of future pathways. We also work on country pathways. Similarly, we've recently produced Malaysian and Indonesian roadmaps as part of our ASEAN study with high levels of detail, with a 19-node model for Indonesia and a 9-node model for Malaysia, 18-node for Indonesia, and then we produced a full energy systems analysis for Nigeria also, as well as several thematic reports. So, the purpose of the global now, I'll just run through some global results first. So, because these essentially set the target from which the regional and the country kind of roadmaps kind of follow through. So essentially, we assess where current plans will take us across transport, buildings, all the energy sectors, and identify where those key actions are needed and across which technologies. And this is very important in terms of determining the level of action needed. And our colleagues in Abu Dhabi who work more on policy-orientated work so we project the pathways, they would look at, okay, what policy would be necessary to achieve that and to enable that in as fair and equitable way as will be possible to maximize the benefits and minimize the possible externalities and negatives. And it's clear that the longer we leave it to meet this pathway, the more difficult it's going to be. We produce several key indicators across various different factors for different years for a planned energy scenario, which is PES, and the 1.5, which is 1.5 degree compliant for the world. And this global level of modeling has very different shape to the regional due to computational limits and aggregation needed. So we look at what level of electricity is needed, what level of renewable energy shares in power generation in each scenario. How does modern use of bioenergy evolve, be it for cooking in various regions of the world? What is the electrification rate across different sectors and transport in cooking and industrial processes? Where is CCS likely to evolve, and what is the role for that envisaged in the plans, and how would that compare to our 1.5? All these essentially help us understand and offer us key indicators as to communicate where we are going, and where we kind of need to be at a global level. And this is our assessment of the role of electricity in our 1.5 degree scenario. So it's going to rise directly to 51% of end use by 2050. So with very high levels of electrification across sectors, transport and buildings. And of course, a huge amount of green hydrogen, which would be also produced using electricity. And of course, all this is very important. This is a global target or global scenario. What this means at a regional and a country level is very different. What is the role of nuclear in these scenarios? It's very different at a country level. But at a global level, this is how Irena would see it. And in all honesty, a lot of scenarios are largely convergent, I think, on the solutions needed. Certainly in terms of the broad strokes, in terms of high levels of electrification and decarbonization pathways. So this is the high level of electrification we see an excess of a tripling by 2050 in our 1.5. And of course, it's one thing for the model to say this is what is necessary. It's quite another thing for that to happen. And these discussions and scenario analysis really help generate those discussions. And through modeling we do, in various regions, it helps us understand what that looks like. Essentially, it tells us a story. Okay, this is the level of ramping needed. How's that going to happen? This is the level of inertia that's coming through. And this is the challenge. I suppose the key purpose of this work is not to prescribe this is your system for you in 2050. It's to show that it's if we are to get there, it's a normative scenario. So if we are to get there, this is what would be needed, essentially, under our assumptions and that. And of course, scenario analysis can help unpack the iterations and path dependencies of all these different things. So as a core part of the renewable energy roadmap, the remap process, is we produce the end use projections. From that we determine electricity need, hydrogen need, and then I would work on models that would help assess this in PLEXOS among a team, and then we present these results to national stakeholders at various intervals. So what are problems foreseen with our planned energy scenario? Are there anything there we haven't captured, or are there issues with it that we haven't taken into account? Or what about the 1.5, which is of course more challenging and thus contentious. But by presenting these assumptions like this, we can understand it's always a challenging process to balance the stakeholder engagement among often non-expert modelers, but it's very important to gain a rich level of input and insight into the process, and that really aids for the impact of the report, because that engagement offers a greater degree of ownership and engagement throughout the process, and that's what we strive to do ultimately, given most of our collaborators are either our ministries or regional bodies. So this is an overview of our toolkit. So the point of today is to just present, this is how we do our analysis, this is why we do it, and possibly generate some interesting input and discussion and chat for later. So across all the end-use sectors, we use our own activity tool where we look at end uses individually, so vehicle transport. We look at various different industrial demands such as chemicals production and steel manufacturing and all sorts, and then these form an input to basically, so we have a very rich understanding of what demand could look like in these scenarios. And then we use that to feed into our PLEXOS model to see what that means for the power sector and what level of flexibility that could mean, or inflexibility, possibly. And then from this, we iterate. So we iterate between the two, possibly, if there are any issues that are encountered, possibly, in the near term. For example, excessive electrification, near term, that isn't possible, for example. And this also feeds back into the engagement process. So it's a multimodal, multi-model approach which really enriches the insights. So then we look at investments and various other transformation centers, and then we aggregate all, and then we produce the analysis and determine possible insights. So I've already touched on a lot of this. So the REMAP modeling framework consists of various different models at various different scales. So at a global level, it's a simplified aggregation framework, kind of a meta-analysis of various different country reports to assess where current plans are, what 1.5 could look like, and that. And then at a regional level, we would dispatch, no pun intended, PLEXOS to see what that means now for the power sector. But in recent times it's been messaged, but in the past, in recent times it's been PLEXOS, but most recently we've used, in other times we've used Message, and we've also used Flex Tool, which is our free dispatch tool, to understand the sector better. But when we first started doing this kind of analysis, it was like typically 2030 focus, near term. So we didn't predominantly use PLEXOS long-term for our long-term expansion. It was very much, we had a simplified tool that looked at the trade-offs between different technologies, and then we plugged it into a dispatch model to see what it looked like. And I'll show you an example of that in a few minutes. And in recent times, especially going to 2050, the longer-term horizon, and indeed the challenges of actually meeting these targets and understanding them, we've deployed PLEXOS long-term. So, and this again, like other work, enables a very rich level of insights. So, for the dispatch analysis, we basically took all the outputs, the installed capacities, generation demand, calibrated hourly profiles, renewables profiles, and basically say, does this thing work? What does it look like by 2030 at a high level using a day-ahead market model developed in PLEXOS? So, and through that we could see what curtailment would look like, what wholesale prices would look like, cross-border trade, congestion, and interconnectors under, all very transparent and assumptions based on wholesale market cost and model constraints. So, and what this did was it helped us understand, okay, out to 2030, what lines will be congested, where it also helped us tell a story about what this could look like by 2030, and where the possible pinch points were in that near-term transition. And for Central and Southeastern Europe interconnectivity. So, and again, this helped us often, as you see as used in our reports, we would show a critical week in that period, high renewable, low demand, high renewable. What does it look like? And the key output of this this analysis was it showed the level of collaboration and interaction needed between various national power systems for 2030 in the high ambitious case to facilitate this. And then, again, that was a key conclusion to show what was needed going forward. Again, for the regional roadmap for Southeast Asia, we developed a full ASEAN PLEXOS model to help us understand how net zero could, or not net zero necessarily, not net zero in this case, but net zero globally, what that could look like in Southeast Asia. And we identified these key factors in that study through our engagement with national stakeholders and through discussions within the team and among various different staff at Irena. So key was electrification, expansion of renewables, mobility, energy efficiency, hydrogen, and these are all covered in various levels of detail in the report. So, and essentially, this shows these are the results of various different scenarios we produced for ASEAN as a whole, and in the end, it was a highly ambitious case. And this report had shed as you can see, the level of solar power is quite minimal in 2018, and this showed immediately when you put it into a model, all the model would want to do is build solar and storage. And by generating scenarios like this, it really enabled discussion in that regard, in direct collaboration with the ASEAN Centre for Energy. So essentially, it showed the benefits and the impacts on costs of moving this direction. And key to the report was identifying measures which are needed to be taken to achieve this. So, and I won't go through all of this now, but we looked at the various levels of interconnection needed. We looked at the level of solar deployment needed at a country level, and basically identified very vast challenges in actually achieving a 1.5 for the region. And a very useful discussion on what this could look like, because the renewable energy resources, depending on the country, it's largely an abundance of solar and very particular locations for other resources. So how does the system work when it's that kind of homogeneous in that kind of a way, with wind only in some areas and limited areas, and but though potent, and hydro as well. So, and then as is tradition, we looked at what a challenging week would look like, what electrolyzer charging would look like, what EV charging could look like, the benefits that it could bring, and the role of interconnectors in achieving this. So, and then we also did a simplified, this is just further on that, the simplified dispatch we did to show, again, what this 1.5 degree could look like, and also how could it be facilitated, and what discussions are needed to make that happen. So thank you very much. This is the concluding slide. We strive to balance engagement, model complexity, and modeling needs, and it's impossible to a great degree, because its amenability to engagement is core to the remap approach. And enabling a wide level of discussion really strengthens the approach advance in our studies. So that's very core to that. And also in modeling integrated sectoral needs is very important too. That's it. I'd like to conclude here. Yeah, and if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to discuss further. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Okay, if you want to wait for a microphone to come.
Thank you, Sean, for the presentation. I was curious, you're developing a lot of tools, like models. Yeah. Do you also, apart from making the data open source, do you also make those models open source, or are they only for Irena?
That very much depends on the use case. So we in the past we have developed FlexTool, which is a tool that is made freely available to the public and is currently being expanded. But our data sets would very much be dependent on the release of those studies. For example, for Southeast Asia, we have released that data set online in a dashboard, or a very substantial part of it. And of course, we're always open to engagement and discussions in that regard. In general, we due due to a lot of confidential data also being in those data sets, we're limited also by what we can share, because national stakeholders would share a lot of information and we would be bound by that. But in general, we would strive to make as much as possible open. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone else? I have a question, Sean. It's really nice to see a really in-depth analysis of the market, and really done both bottom-up and top-down. What is your biggest challenge, particularly when you're modelling Europe? Which is the area that you find most difficult to get data and get sensible results on?
I would say Europe is possibly one of the best regions, best and most challenging at the same time for modelling, due to the sheer extent of data availability. So in that sense, it's very easy to build quite data-rich models where you can generate various different insights. But the challenges of that is everyone else has that data as well. So the discussions can run very, very deep, and you can unpack various different factors across the whole energy system, such as the EU primes model is open, large to a great degree, or the results of it are largely open for the public. And also, various different other studies are. And so we have published a huge amount in recent years. So the challenges come from, it's great because you can build really rich models and generate really rich insights, but also there's an onus on you to be highly authoritative and careful in developing those models too. So I would say the great challenge is in doing so as much as we can, as well as the sheer technical challenges involved with this. Yeah.
Oh, great. No, well, thank you very much. Any other last-minute questions before Sean goes? No? Brilliant. No, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jason.
Thank you.